self-explanatory, is where safe list will only accept emails coming in that uh, are from people that you've manually put into your safe list. Obviously, it can take a good amount of time. You can modify those different categories as well, like I talked about up here. This is where the whitelist and the blacklist is. Microsoft's terms are safe and blocked. When you're done with these settings, you simply click OK. And the nice thing about this is if you've got an Exchange server and you do this in Outlook, you only have to do it once. These junk mail filters settings will follow you to whatever computer you're working on and even work in Outlook Web Access. So like I said, possibly an effective in addition to a filter, because they do take some manual work and programming. They're definitely not going to be the most effective. Most agencies don't work with them, and typically we don't in here internally either, but it is good to know that you've got those options. Preview pane, though, is a very important one, and we do advocate that you don't use that. And there are third-party programs out there that can actually work in Outlook. All the antivirus companies nowadays seems that they have one of these included in their antivirus suite of products. Again, it's going to do the same type of thing, though. What it's going to do is let the email come into your Outlook, and then once it actually does come to you, it's going to do something with it, delete it, move it to a different folder, and so on. These are a little more common if you don't actually have your own mail server. This is where if you have your own mail server, it's not going to be that effective. Managing spam at the mail server. A lot of people have heard about the program GFI Mail Essentials, and that is one of the ways we're going to talk about. But I want to get a little simpler first and talk about some security settings on your server. There's something out there called Open Relay, and that's a security setting that's really in all mail servers. And what it does basically is allows your server to be used for other people to send their mail through or filter it through. Kind of like the money scrubbing operations you hear about in the movies. This is like an email hiding technique. In some cases, it is needed for whatever purpose, but if not set up properly, some pretty bad things can happen. And obviously, the most typical one that's going to happen is your mail server is going to get put on one of those internet lists. People are going to say they're not going to allow email from you, and you're going to get lots of deliverables. Another thing can happen is once you get known as a relay server, people are going to use you more and more and more and more. It's going to heavily affect the load on your email server. It's going to heavily affect the load on your internet access. It's going to slow things down and eventually lead to your mail server crashing. We've seen it happen. So here's an example of what an open relay is and how it really works. You've got your internet out here, and then mail recipient X at spam.com. He's actually going to send a mail through your server, but tell it to go somewhere else. So it's like somebody's sending an email to the Smart Services server, but not for somebody at Smart Services. And having an open relay will allow them to do that. So these spammers will do this 3, 4, 5 times through different servers, and what it does is it makes it hard to track where they're coming from. So obviously, not only are you going to cause problems for your own mail server by having these open relay things not set, and I'll add that all it takes to do an open relay security setup in Exchange is an address or two input in your server and taking a check out of a box that's done by default. It's very common that we actually see a lot of IT companies miss that one checkbox. So the last thing it's going to do, obviously, make spammers hard to track down, and it's going to make things a little worse for the rest of us. So aside from Open Relay, there's something out there called Exchange IMF. And what that is it's Microsoft's Exchange Intelligent Message Filtering. The same technology for filtering spam that's in Hotmail and MSN Mail and Microsoft Live, that's actually built into Exchange Server. Most people don't know it because it's just a middle of the line filter, but it's free if you've got Exchange. It is greatly improved in Exchange 2007, which is why I've indicated that again 2007 is out there. For a lot of people that aren't on it, Exchange 2010 is around just around the corner, beginning to come out next year. So it's time to think about Exchange 2007. Again, one of the improvements is a better free built-in spam filter. And third-party programs. They're always more sophisticated than doing filtering in Outlook and just Exchange built-in filter. The one we've used and recommended for quite a while is called GFI Mail Essentials. It does offer a lot more and more advanced filtering techniques. Um, there are a lot of other added benefits too, though. Aside from spam filtering, you can set up agency-wide or company-wide disclaimers and signatures. These are ones that are tacked on at the mail server, so you don't have to worry about all your users having the exact same signature. You don't have to worry about, accidentally forgetting your legal stamp on an email and then having an E&O issue. And you can actually use these too for auto replies. Say you're hiring and you've got an employment email address. You can have an auto reply that says thank you for your submission, but we also require a list of references, salary requirements, etc. So if you haven't included these, please do so. Just one example of what you can do with an auto reply. And easy email monitoring. You can monitor email with most versions of Exchange. It does take some manual work, though. These programs simplify that process greatly by having emails to or from or with other different aspects of words, senders, recipients, automatically go to a certain person, to a certain box, to a location that you can check them easier in the future. You can manage spam at the network entry point, and what that is referring to is something called a DMZ. I'll show a quick illustration of what a DMZ is here in just a moment, but it's basically like a third part of the network, is where one part of the network is inside, one part of the network's outside on the internet, and this DMZ thing is kind of off to the side. It's a parallel network. And what you do with this is, it has all the benefits of handling spam at your mail server. It does require an additional server, usually a smaller server. A very high-powered workstation with some redundancy will do just fine. But it greatly reduces the workload on your mail server. We've seen customers with very old domain names and some people that don't have the best email habits getting 250,000 spam a day come to their server. And even 1% of that, just 1%, is still letting hundreds and hundreds of spam through every day. So that's going to take a lot of load off that email server. It doesn't have to process those 250,000 emails anymore, only the good ones that come through. It also, and the bigger benefit is, it gets rid of the need for having holes in your firewall to your internal network. And you say, well, yeah, Bryant, that's pretty typical. We have to have a hole in our firewall for, our website and for email and things. And sure you do. We understand that, and it's very common, and that's why you always want to have your Microsoft security patches done, so those holes in your firewall aren't exploitable. But when it comes down to it, anytime you have to have a hole open in your firewall, it's a potential security risk. So what this DMZ server does is it doesn't let email come into your internal